right, everybody, let's talk about waivers for a second. And this is a favorite topic of mine because waivers is something that I think we not only misuse quite a bit, but we misunderstand. And the misuse of them causes a lot of problems, not just for you and your patients, but also for other providers downstream from you. So let's pick apart waivers for a second. So a waiver, or Signal 93, whatever you call it where you're from. A waiver simply protects you and your agency from liability if something negatively happens to that patient after after you're either not performing certain treatments or not taking them to the hospital. That's all it does. It's a waiver. That's it. Now, it is meant to protect you, but it often gets turned into a tool to, I guess, somehow make our life more convenient. And I think that mentality is, while maybe people wouldn't necessarily word it that way, that's how they end up using it, because it's one thing for your patient to adamantly state, I do not want to go to the hospital. It's another thing for them to say, I'm confused and I want some help. And for you to sit there and argue with them about why they don't need to go to the hospital. That's not our job. Our job is to not dictate where they go. And guess what? If you spend 30 or 40 minutes on scene arguing with them to get them to waiver, guess what? You could have just taken them to the hospital at that point, because you're not available for calls at that point. You're still engaged in patient care. And you might as well just go ahead and take them. And now, I'm not saying you shouldn't educate your patients. If they have questions, answer their questions. Tell them what you know. Tell them what you don't know. Now, but also don't answer them in ways that beat them down or make them feel stupid for calling. Explain to them how triaging works. Explain to them how our assessments work and what we can, how we do differential diagnoses and so forth. It doesn't take long. It's not a prolonged conversation, but take the time to explain it to them. But don't lie to them. Don't make up shit, and don't don't make them feel bad for calling, because if they actually have a real emergency downstream, then they're less likely to call. Obviously, there are outliers on this subject. There are plenty of people that do truly abuse 911. That is a fact. Not going to argue with that. But that doesn't mean that everybody that calls 911 who doesn't have a life-threatening emergency is abusing it either. Because what are we seeing with emergency healthcare across the board, both pre-hospital and in-hospital? That is becoming people's primary care, because what happens? They call a doctor, and it may be 6 months before they get to see them. Okay, cool, get it. That sucks. So what do people do next? Well, a lot of times they'll go to Dr. Google. Well, Dr. Google's not fucking helpful, because if you have toe pain, then you probably are going to have cancer and die. So what do they want to do? They want to call and talk to somebody, so they call us. And we tend to live very much inside of our own heads, and we are so intimately familiar with what's truly an emergency and what's not, that we just presume that everybody else has that sense about them, and they don't. People don't have that innate confidence in what's actually an emergency and what's not. And it kind of falls back on the compassion conversation, but take a minute to, instead of jumping down someone's throat, educate them a little bit. Now, with waivers, well, and just with patients in general, our job is to provide care as needed and to move a patient from where they are to definitive care. Are there some things that we can treat and treat? Treat and street. There we go. Are there things that we can treat and street? Absolutely. There's plenty of things that we can fix and send them on their way. How often do we go out for diabetics? That we give them some D10, give them something to eat, something to drink, families with them, they're cool, sayonara, have a good day. So there's things like that, yes, we can fix, and there's no need for further definitive care. But we're not always meant to be the judge, jury, and executioner of that either. Think of cops. Cops are not judges. Cops go out to calls. They make an assessment. Hey, is this a situation that I can resolve here without anybody going to jail, and we just call it even, and everybody's fine? Or is the situation more severe, more complicated than that specific officer or officers can handle? In which case, people are going to jail, and the judge sorts it out. We're no different. There are some things that we can treat and street in place and be fine, and then there's lots of other things that, hey, we can manage. We can do some amazing stabilizing and management treatments, but we cannot be definitive care. And so I think that we skew that perception a little bit. And no, I'm not saying we're ambulance drivers. Not at all. That is not the point of this conversation. I loathe, loathe that term when it's used sincerely. But what I'm talking about is, bear in mind that we drive an ambulance for a reason. An ambulance is meant to take people places. And yes, I would love to see a world where we integrate more with urgent cares, not just emergency rooms. But we're a long way from that, and I don't know that we'll ever fully get there, at least not in America. But at the end of the day, someone calls, we take them. And it's also important to make sure that you're respecting your patient's wishes too, because with waivers, there's plenty of times where we think, oh, these people don't need to go to the hospital. Well, but then there's plenty of times that they do, and they don't want to go. And one, you better document the hell out of it. And two, you need to respect your patient's wishes. That's part of being a patient advocate, is advocating for their choice, their informed choice, even if you don't agree with it. Now, does that mean you let patients dictate all of your care? No. But if a patient doesn't want care or certain aspects of care, it is your job to respect that, period. And it is also your job to make sure that they have informed consent on these decisions. You should be going above and beyond to truthfully inform them of the severity of their situation and of all the potentially negative repercussions that could come from it if they don't receive the prescribed treatment now. So don't lie to your patients, but it's okay to exaggerate a little bit, in the sense of you don't actually know fully what could happen. You could be thoroughly convinced that Meemaw that you've come out to for belly pain is going to be just fine, and she'll just need to sleep it off, and maybe a couple of days she'll feel better. And maybe that can be true, but it can also be true that she ends up with a AAA and ends up bleeding out internally, and you just left her at home to die. So it's not exaggerating to say, to inform the patient that, hey, there's a wide range of options of things that could happen to you. So be aware of those when you're making your decision. And there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, if someone asks your opinion, oh, should I go to the hospital? Me personally, I always tell them, hey, I'm required to advise you to seek transport anytime that you have an urgent medical need of any kind. I can tell you my assessment findings. I can tell you what I think is or is not going on, my impressions of stuff, but I can't make that decision for you. So here's all the facts. You make the informed decision for what you want. So go the extra mile to have the conversation with them and be reasonable with them. I'll tell you a story. I had a time, it was an elderly female patient who was having an MI right in front of me. And we performed serial 12 leads and showed her the ST changes, and she was continuing to refuse. Called my supervisor. He tried to talk to her. She wouldn't do it. Called a med control doc and put him on speakerphone. And he had a whole conversation with her and told her that she could fucking die if she doesn't get help. and she still didn't want to go. Well, guess what? Cool. You have been informed. You are aware of the consequences or at least of the potential consequences of not receiving care right now. So cool. Have a nice day. That's your job. That you respecting that patient is just as much your job as you treating them when they want the help. But I cannot emphasize this enough with waivers. Use them appropriately. If patients don't want to go, they don't want to go. It's fine. It's not your job to sit there and force every patient to go. If they don't want to go, cool. Explain everything to them. They still don't want to go? Awesome. Sign here. Have a nice day. Do your job thoroughly. But when you abuse it and you try to waiver everybody, you're going to negatively impact other people too, because you're going to frustrate them so much. You're effectively trying to almost gaslight them in a way. Whether it's, malicious or not is a different conversation, but ultimately they're getting frustrated because they're like, well, I thought that, I was going to get help if I called. I thought that this was something where, you guys would actually help me if I needed it. And it just causes more apprehension on their part a lot of times. And then when another crew comes out a day, 2 days, a week, 3 months later, they're going to bring that apprehension to the room, and it's going to negatively impact your interaction with them. I've had that happen countless times over the years. So stop making waivers your bread and butter and use them correctly, and stop forcing people. Stop shaming them. Stop double talking them out of going to the hospital. Just don't. That is not our responsibility. Are there a lot of things that needs to be changed infrastructure wise with healthcare and everything? Yes, absolutely. I am not disputing that at all. Everybody is overwhelmed all the fucking time. But that doesn't change our responsibilities and our professional conduct, which should be our standard of professional conduct. So, final takeaway with waivers: be thorough, document appropriately, explain everything to your patients accurately, and don't steer them. Give them the facts. Respect their right to make a decision, even if it's not the decision you would make. That's all I got for you guys. Be safe. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.